Mr. Arun Mehra, Member Planning Commission, who I knew very well in his earlier avatar as a consultant with BCG. Mr. Shri from the Ministry of MSME, Mr. T.K. Arun, Anil Bhardwaj, V.K. Agarwal, and all ladies and gentlemen present here this morning. First of all, a very good morning to you. I know it's slightly early in the morning. I think everyone will be dying for a coffee break soon enough, and I'll make sure that my speech is succinct so that we can get to that. It indeed is a pleasure to be here. I still remember very fondly last year when T.K. Arunji approached me for the first MSME summit that was held in New Delhi. I remember our focus during that conference was on new markets, on Africa, on the ASEAN region, how that will impact India, what the opportunities are in that area. And the topic for this conference today is mantras for growth. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate the organizers, FISME, as well as Economic Times, for really putting in place thought-provoking, and not only thought-provoking, but I think the future path that India must lead in terms of gaining its rightful place in the industrial comity of nations. Today, I think India is very clearly an economic powerhouse in the making. I think India is in the process of being catapulted, and the reason for that catapulting is not very difficult to find. The very fact that we have a huge domestic demand, coupled by the fact that due to India being such a big market, billion people, close to about 300 to 400 million aspirational middle class. I remember when I used to be an investment banker, much like Arunji was a consultant in his last life, in my last life, in the early 90s, when he and I were both in related but separate fields. We used to keep touting this number of 300-400 million middle class, which actually did not exist. Today it does exist in terms of the capability of purchasing power. That, I think, is a huge fillip to India as a market, to India as an attractive investment destination. I also believe that we are again going to trace back our economic growth path to the 9% growth rates that we have been accustomed to, except for the tsunami that hit us last year. And what I think is very important here, because I think in our interactions with publications like the Economic Times, with T.K. Arunji, we always keep aspiring to the fact that we have to grow at 10%. I don't think that that is that important. What is more important is that we must have a minimum growth rate of 8 to 8.5%. Because the power of an economic giant is not predicated purely and merely on just an economic growth rate as a blip of 11, 12, 10% in a year or particular years. If you trace back the history of the US, which is the world's economic giant today, for the last 100 years, did grow, but only grew at 3.5%, but it grew at that rate for 100 years. So the magic in emerging as an economic giant lies not merely in the statistical number, but more so in the power of compounding of that number. And India has been able to do that since our finance minister in 1991, our current Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, unleashed economic reform. From 91 to today, we're talking about a span of almost 2 decades. The average growth rate, if you look at a CAGR, has been close to about 6 to 6.5%. And that is what has brought about the revolution that we are seeing in India today. The India of 2010 is certainly not the India of 1991. And I guarantee you that the India of 2020 is certainly not going to be the India of 2010. Now, therein lies the opportunity for all of us. China today is being touted as the world's fastest growing economy. Of course it is. It's being touted as the world's next economic power by 2020. But what reassures me and gives me a great deal of confidence that even a house such as PwC has forecasted that India's growth rate is going to even surpass that of China by 2020. India is also going through a demographic dividend. Our median age today is 25 years. Japan is 43. US is 36. So combine that demographic dividend that we have today with the fact that if you compare ourselves to our nearest competitors, which you in industry also do all the time, so the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, China, we have close to 70% of our population as our working population. We are adding close to 10 million jobs every single year. Therein, I think, again, lies the opportunity for India. Our per capita income has grown by a healthy 10% last year. Yes, of course, from a very, very low base of 40,000 rupees to 44,000 rupees. But therein, again, we are looking at major compounding in the years to come. Talking about our internal market, our consumer market, McKinsey has estimated our domestic market at close to about a consumer market close to about 511 billion to grow close to about 4 times in the next 10 to 15 years. And a small sampling of that for you is the telecom story. When I returned from university from the US in 1993, there was not even a single mobile phone in our country. From 1993, when the first licenses were given out, which seems history for us now, but if all of you remember Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta and Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken, the first 4 cities, metros that were given out. Till today, you have 600 million mobiles in this country. And what rate are we growing at? 10 to 15 million a month. That's the huge opportunity that India represents for us within the MSME environment and for foreign investors. And this is a market that no other country can emulate. Now the challenge for us certainly is that these are great opportunities. But are we ready within the SME environment and the SME world to be able to harvest those opportunities, to grasp those low-hanging fruits? And that, to us, is a challenge that we must answer. As my colleague Dinesh Raiji said, the MSME sector is definitely the backbone of our industry. To me, it's a thermometer. It's a barometer of 2 issues. One, the obvious one, which is industrial growth, which will be important to me. But more important than that is that it is a barometer of entrepreneurial capability in a country. The very fact that 45% of manufacturing is from the MSME sector, 40% of our exports are the MSME sector. You provide close to 60 million jobs in the country today. An additional 1 million per year. Those are tremendous opportunities that we must harvest on and capitalize on. And the growth process that you follow should be based on your comparative strengths so that you can compete on a global basis. The world is going through a new paradigm. Five years ago, 10 years ago, one would always look westwards. Today the West is looking east. Asia is the new fulcrum of growth. The African countries, Asia, Oceania, Latin America are where the opportunities lie in the world today. And let me explain that to you. If you look at the IMF forecast for the next 10 to 15 years, they are looking at China growing at 9 to 11%, India 8 to 10%, Brazil close to about 5.5%, Africa